Hi everyone, welcome to YouthLink Scotland's webinar series on platforms. So today we're going to be talking about using Zoom in youth work, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Kobi Cooke from Youth Scotland to be our guest expert on the webinar today. So the format is that Kobi's going to share some of his experiences with you and lead the session, and then at the end of sort of his input we're going to go to question and answer and see what questions you might have about using Zoom in youth work. It's going to be a 30-minute session ending at 12:30, or 25-minute session now ending at 12:30. So yeah, over to you, Kobi, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Okay, thanks very much, Liz, and good morning, everyone. I'm just going to start by just getting up a few slides just to talk through what I'm doing. I've got a backdrop of a slideshow because I'm not that confident just to give you all the nuggets of experience freehand. I'm a development worker, stroke youth worker. I'm not a digital expert. I'm not an expert on Zoom. I was left in no man's land a couple of weeks ago, like most of us, where we had to sort of have a really hard look at how we operate very quickly. So the idea is just to talk you through some of that journey that I've been on personally, obviously related to where I work, which is Youth Scotland, and then obviously an example of some of the activities that we do, a little chat about some of the safeguarding stuff that we've created, because I think that's a whole new level of concern for some people, and hopefully we can simplify that, because I think Zoom in particular is a great tool. It has its limitations, but it also has things that maybe we haven't really used before and we can use more. So forgive me for death by PowerPoint, but I'll just get that up in 1 second. Okay, just share screen, PowerPoint. So I'm just obviously just using the share screen function. Can I just check, can you all see the slides coming up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I forgot you're all muted, so I just need like thumbs up and stuff if you can't see us there. Okay, so basically, just it's a short session. A little bit about who I am, what I do. I think I've covered some of that. Everything's going to be discussed briefly because I'm sure you have lives out with the Zooms and lots of stuff to do. Maybe an example of an activity that we might do. And at the end, there'll be some time for some feedback, some questions. And Liz, I'm sure you'll keep me right if I rattle on too much. I've got form for doing that. So yeah, I'm just, as I said, development worker. I've been in Youth Scotland for 3 years, but I've got previous experience in youth work in Scotland, going back about 10, 15 years. Also in advocacy, criminal justice. So I'm your stereotypical been around the block a few times guy. I deliver a number of programs at Youth Scotland, and this year I'm mainly working with Youth Scotland's Cashback Network, which is slightly different to YouthLink's Cashback Network. I live in Edinburgh. I've got more kids than I can handle, and also more cats than I can handle, which becomes very relevant in the Zoomosphere. So if you see a cat jump on me or anything like that, it's not staged, it's just my life. I wanted to just start with obviously my experience of change. I knew something was going to happen. I think, like we all did, we were waiting for things to start closing, and you know, lockdowns to be put in. So we knew that we might have to deal with it maybe a week or two beforehand. And I was a bit of not a conspiracy theorist, but I knew something was going to happen. But obviously, when it did happen, we had to think on our feet and react very quickly. So I tried to think about how I could talk that through, and I couldn't. So I just tried to do a nice little graph that shows my own process. Organisationally, we have to look at risk factors, and there has to be discussions about these things before the event. But for me personally, it was dealing with immediate needs, and those included personal. So how am I going to work from home? You know, how am I going to look after my kids and work from home? The organisation, it was safety. It was how are we going to keep our staff safe, the building, the premises, financial considerations. So everything for the first week or two was all caught up with just functioning. That mainly moved into a phase of establishing communication. We had to all connect on Microsoft Teams. We had well-being concerns about some staff being isolated. We have about 1,500 member groups. So some of you may be members of Youth Scotland, some of you may not. But we actually tried to call the majority of those within the first week and a half. So if you can imagine trying to reach 1,500 different organisations, some very small, some quite large. And what we got back was they were dealing with their immediate needs. So from our point of view, it was really important that we understood what the needs were, because we were all geared up to do online training, whereas their needs were paying the rent. So there was an immediacy that was brought home to us very quickly about what needed to be done. So we then moved into evaluating and acting. And for me personally, that was, okay, how am I going to deliver certain things? What are people wanting me to deliver? Child protection came up quite a lot. We had obviously some drug and alcohol workshops, stuff around well-being. So we knew that if we're going to develop things, let's respond to that. Developing was relatively simple, because if you've got a PowerPoint, as you can see here, you have a template. You know, you have a template to use. But actually, the difficulty was the assumptions that we make in terms of all young people have a laptop. They've all got an empty room. They all actually want to talk to you while they're on lockdown, you know, which for some young people is quite structured. For other young people, it's not. The assumption that we always had a safe space. Then we sort of moved into the delivery phase, which is sort of where we are now, in between development and delivery, where we've rolled out some online training via Zoom to member groups, a few groups in Glasgow and a bit further afield. And then we evaluate how that's gone, and then we have to go back again. The reason I've sort of showed it as quite a short cycle is in 2 weeks' time, everything could be different. Everything that you're planning for now on all the structure, in 2 weeks' time, we could have restrictions relieved, which we won't probably, but we could have a very different situation and a very different set of needs. So I've sort of seen this as a very short cycle that we're going through consistently, depending on the availability of technology, the availability of staff, and obviously people's own immediate concerns. Okay. Is anyone fallen asleep yet? Okay, I'm working on it. I'll see what I can do there. So one of the things I was a bit nervous about when we were doing Zoom was Zoom itself. I'd never used Zoom. I was aware of it, and I think I'd maybe been invited to one meeting with people in London and stuff like that, but I was not an expert. I thought using PowerPoint on a video call was like walking on the moon. So after sort of having a play with it, I've just come to the idea, and I keep repeating myself, digital youth work is just used with different tools. And in some ways, it's the tools that young people use more readily than we do. So it's almost like we're playing catch up. Youth Scotland has been developing a load of digital tools and digital resources, but we still rely on face-to-face training. We still want to have that relationship with the people we're training with. That won't change. But actually, we've had to look at how many more young people or groups could we meet by actually embracing the technology. So for me, in the most difficult of times, there is something that we need to take away from this, and some learning longer term as well. I've tried to give you a really simple example of something that we use in a slideshow from a financial education program that's in development. Some of you, I think I recognise, may have been part of the Money for Life training many moons ago that I used to run. And it's just a means of having conversations with young people around money. So forgive me, our access to designers is limited, so you've still got my drafts. But I just wanted to take you through, obviously, a few things of a program we're delivering. So I Lead Money, which is a working title, it's just a financial education project. Nothing, you know, dressed up, 4 modules, really simple, probably chunked up into an hour or so. And the idea is we give youth groups the training and support to deliver to their own young people, because actually they're the most credible people in a young person's life. So one of the things that we do in a few programs, and I'm just going to try and get you onto a bigger screen, is scaling questions. They're quite useful. So I don't know if anyone's got a pen or paper or a thumb. If you have a pen or paper, can you draw something like that, or an arrow? If you don't, can you give your thumb a good workout for thumbs up or thumbs down like that? I can see you all, so I'll make sure you're all doing it. It's Big Brother's watching you. Oh, nice. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Donald. Oh, this is good. Okay, so just a silly example, we use lots of different questions to try and gauge attitudes of young people, and we might say go to one side of the room or whatever else. So on a scale, you've got agree or disagree. So I'm going to come up with a statement, and I want you to show me whether you agree or disagree. So it's very controversial. Ice cream is nowhere near as good as trifle. Can you tell me arrow up or thumbs up if you agree, or arrow down or thumbs down if you disagree? I'm not talking to you, Liz. Okay, I can't see Natalie. Natalie's that's down, isn't it? Okay, that's right. So obviously from that one, it's a silly example. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, everyone else. But obviously you're all wrong if you said ice cream's better, because trifle's a million times better. Now I'm going to ask someone, I'm going to pick on someone randomly, probably Donald, because he's smiling. Never smile at a trainer. They'll always pick on you for an ally. So I'm going to ask Donald to just to unmute yourself and say how you came to that conclusion.
It's not really a conclusion, Cody, it's fact. It's a bit like dog and cat people. If you're really into trifle, I'm not sure we can be pals.
Very good. You wouldn't believe the rows I create when I do that, and that's just a sort of a way in. Now obviously whichever way you do it, this sort of physical engagement, I could just quite easily say thumbs up, thumbs down, but actually if you do anything on a slideshow, have a physical connection. It's a bit like the old brain gym. You know, if you're doing maths but you're running on the spot while you're doing it, you tend to process information better, and online's no different. It also stops death by PowerPoint. So thank you very much for that, Donald. Has anyone got a counter view they wish to share? Because obviously Donald seems to be the authority, but has anyone got a counter view to challenge the intellectual might of Donald there? No? He's left. That's it. He's a mic drop and he's gone. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just move on there. Thank you for that. Obviously that's a... All right. I'm on lockdown, but I'm also on lockdown from fatty foods at the minute. So I might have to go to the shops for an urgent food run soon. Thanks for that, Donald. So yeah, so move on. So the next activity is just a very basic one. It's something that we run off a slideshow. Sometimes I just talk it through. So this one again, it's higher or lower. Okay, so we'll go from there. Stick with me on this. I'm getting somewhere with this. So on the screen you should have some pictures of some celebs, all looking slightly unformatted because I put together the slide myself 2 weeks ago, and it's a waiting design. Over here we have Thor. Yeah, is it Chris Helmsworth? Someone help me out. Yeah, Chris Helmsworth. And 2019 he took home about £27 million or the equivalent in dollars. Can you tell me, by pointing up or down or getting your arrow together, up or down, do you think J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame earned more or less than that? Okay. Anyone? Yep, I'm just waiting. Higher or lower? Okay. 74.5. Okay, now Lionel Messi. Higher or lower? Okay. 64. Ooh. See, I can tell you're on the edge of your seats with this. It hasn't got the same verve in the house, but we're working on it. Now, the man himself, Simon Cowell, higher or lower than Lionel Messi? Okay, lower. I'm sorry, Natalie. You look like you were dead certain on that one. Okay, Lewis Hamilton, 36. Nicola Sturgeon, lower. Okay, now, Boris Johnson, higher or lower? Lower, higher. Would anyone like to have a guess? If Nicola Sturgeon is 135, what's Boris worth? Just shout out. Not say what he's worth, actually. What does he get paid? Not what he's worth.
It's like 200 grand.
Okay, 200 grand, okay. 150, so he's only sort of on 15 grand more than Nicola Sturgeon. That's a bit weird. Obviously, in a session, I tend to sort of put Boris Johnson straight after Lewis Hamilton, because young people all estimate the Prime Minister's wages to be about £2-3 million. They look at Lewis Hamilton, they look at Simon Cowell, and they think, he's got nuclear weapons. He runs the country. He's got to be paid loads. So that's something where usually I'd put that a bit closer. Jeff Bezos, higher or lower than, obviously higher than Prime Minister, higher or lower than Chris Helmsworth with 27 million, higher or lower than that? Higher or lower than Lionel Messi? Thank you, Lindsay, for the energy. I like the energy, Lindsay. Thank you very much. Higher or lower than J.K. Rowling? Okay. His actual salary from Amazon was $67,000, which is a little weird. But when we break it down, he's obviously worth a lot more than that. We go through it with young people, so break down his earnings. So he's obviously on almost as much as Liz Green over at YouthLink. And when we look at that, he's doing okay. So the idea is, when this is a slide that I've slightly tweaked, but instead of doing a face-to-face where you can have people reveal things and all the rest of it, you try and get people a little bit interactive. I've chosen a very boring section of the training I did before, where we're talking about tax with young people. And this is one of the lead-ins. So thank you for putting up for me with that one. I'll just skip through. We've been doing quite a lot in terms of development. So there's a little picture over there of one of my colleagues doing a training session that we've got permission to share. So we've done some drug and alcohol training. Obviously, I'm doing some financial education stuff. I'm caught between getting it designed and getting it developed. So I'm just going to do some sessions where we're not sending out a big toolkit. I'm just going to have the training with workers, but we are developing a whole set of resources and slides and videos and stuff like that. Child protection is key. We do that with all our member groups. Our role in Youth Scotland primarily is supporting youth work in the community. So child protection training is a big part of our offer, and we're rolling out child protection, which is hopefully the same level that we do as part of our accredited youth worker training, so we can continue to upskill youth workers. Obviously, first aid awareness is quite interactive anyway. It's somewhere between online training and in the person. But there's particular issues around hygiene and first aid awareness, obviously. We've got a new program about to launch next week or two. I think it's up on the website now. It's like a digital citizen package. We've got some funding from Google to deliver, which goes into things like how young people can spot fake news, what echo chambers are. So it was interesting before, but now it seems that it's risen to prominence because of the situation we're in. Okay, so also, one of the big things we offer at Youth Scotland is accreditation. We do quite a few of these a year in community and in education, and they're all SQA rated. So we've already sort of tried to sort of get these doable at home, if you like. Now, this is completely different to a school getting the awards and doing them in PSE, or a youth club accrediting a particular residential, something like that. We're dealing with parents now, really, and that's you know, and carers. So what we have to do is we have to make sure we're communicating with people that don't get the lingo. And youth workers, as I will mention later, we make a lot of assumptions. We are around young people all the time, so we're sort of like, I know young people. But myself, I'm 45 from South London. What do I know about someone in Govan and their daily life? I don't. I can assume, but I'm not as credible as someone their own age or who lives in their own area. I just get away with it because I've got a South London accent and I'm a bit gobby, basically. So the idea is awards which are very technical. How do we change the language so that a parent who's stressed, working from home like you guys, myself, can pick these up and maybe do them with young people, or a worker from a youth project can communicate on Zoom and guide them through the accreditation. So we have worked through that. We are looking at digital versions of all the documents, so you don't need any paper. Obviously, being SQA accredited, there's certain processes we have to go through. In terms of data protection, it's quite a strict agreement we've got in terms of how we store the information. But the idea is all these should be available fairly soon. We're already posting them out to families with guidance and free toolkits with activities how to use them, but we're hoping to do that completely digitally very soon. So we're starting from the high five, which is just at the top there, which is our youngest entry level for awards. But then we're also working through all the Dynamic Youth Awards through to the Youth Achievement Awards, which go all the way up to, what we'd say is almost sort of worker-based training, where the demands are independent thought. We're looking at people developing and delivering their own sessions. So there's a range of awards we do that we're working on there. One of the things, obviously, we did, and you probably got it from Liz before myself, is frame everything you're doing online. So this is just the first slide from a session that I've done, where basically you're trying to get people prepared. Now, the waiting room's a good area potentially to do that, or you can have it sitting in the background on a slide. But obviously, you know, in terms of safeguarding, it's really important you get people prepared. I've got family, and I've got cats, and the cats are out there trying to get me. They're just waiting for an inopportune moment. So it's just making sure people are prepared. We've had children walk past in pajamas and stuff, and it's just to make sure that you let people know what you're doing, so that you limit the potential for unconsented exposure to the interweb, if you like. Some other tips, and I'm going to give you, I've got some stuff to leave you with, but these are just a few tips that I've thought are quite useful. Don't give up control of your screen if you're hosting. If you're working with young people, you might find you get some interesting pictures put up that possibly you would rather not. You can set up your own two-factor authentication. You don't have to share the link. Liz has obviously got a waiting room where she can decide who goes through and who doesn't, which is one way of protecting yourself. We use Eventbrite. We get people to the old-fashioned way, register an Eventbrite, and then send out the link, so that we've got that bit of control. But if you're doing anything public and you just want to open it up, you do have to sort of be a bit more cautious, because obviously there are people, is it Zoom busting, who have to take great joy in getting into meetings and doing stuff that's less than courteous, I think is the phrase. You can disable private chat if you're working with people that you don't know and don't know each other. This is prevent any sort of any bullying, any negative comments or anything like that. Obviously, with worker training, we don't seem to assume we need that, but if you're going direct to young people, that's useful. Obviously, in terms of that, remember that anyone can join your meeting if you give them a link, and that's probably not advisable in most cases. Avoid using your personal meeting ID to host public events. You may not, it's a bit like leaving your work mobile. Some people have a personal mobile that doubles up as work and they're happy to have it shared, others aren't. It's the same sort of security for yourselves. And obviously, familiarise yourself with the features. I am not an expert, but the Zoom guidance that we have got is quite useful. I will show you some of the web pages that we used, and literally just go into Zoom, go into the help settings, and they've got videos for pretty much everything. It's pretty idiot proof, as I have found out. And I think that's why I was given to talk to you today, actually, because I think they wanted an authentic idiot's experience of Zoom, and that's why they shoved me in front of you, basically. First of all, I've rattled through. Is there any questions, or does anyone need to sort of take some oxygen or anything like that? No. Okay. So I was asked to have a chat about some of the things that we've come up with as Youth Scotland in terms of safeguarding. I've literally kept it consistent. So all of this information is on our website, and I'll show you where afterwards. One of the things that we wanted people to encourage people to do is to not let the safeguarding situation around Zoom and online be a barrier. It is a minefield sometimes. It is difficult to think about every eventuality, but in terms of child protection in face-to-face training, it's exactly the same. Child protection can be a huge topic area, or it can be a relatively simple issue. So safeguarding, we've tried to keep it relatively simple, and I'm just pressing the wrong button. So around this situation we're in now with the pandemic, we have new challenges. How can you reach young people? How can you do it safely? What activities can we arrange? And safeguarding itself and keeping yourself safe at the same time. So the main thing I would underline is it's consistent with what you do anyway. There are guidelines around work mobile phones. There's guidelines about one-to-one contact. And although we have developed a policy and some documents around this, the common sense rule still applies online. But there are other things to be aware of to protect yourself. The first thing is, separating things in your life. It's very difficult working from home because my working from home impacts on my family because I'm using this space. People have the same Zoom personal account and maybe not have a separate Zoom work account. I would say it's useful to have one account for work, and if you want to do it personally, have that personally, simply because you can get a bit of cross-pollination. It's like a mobile phone. People can invite you, can call you, and if people have you on a list, they can do that. I have my personal Zoom, which I can still communicate with colleagues, but I wouldn't broadcast on my personal Zoom account. I have to use a work Zoom account, which means that if any issues arise, we've got, you know, it's through work. It's not me doing something that's not sanctioned. It's not me responding or taking a call out with permission from the office. And it gives you that layer of protection. And it also means that your workplace is aware of what you're up to as well, which may help just in case there's any disclosures or incidents like that. Yeah, if you're using a laptop or you're using your mobile phone or tablet, it's just check your privacy settings. You take it for granted that obviously a workplace desktop computer or a laptop are pretty well covered, but if you're using your own personal equipment, double check if that dusty laptop you're taking out the cupboard still got coverage for antivirus and stuff like that. In terms of child protection, obviously common sense approach I've just mentioned before. Maintain appropriate behaviour. Yeah, I think we'll all endeavour to do that. I think obviously if you're speaking one-to-one with young people or if you're using house party or anything like that, there is a colloquial language young people might choose to use when they're on groups, and it's just making sure that you can maintain distance. Oops, sorry there. Okay, so create consistent times. If young people all online at 8 o'clock, your organisation may think that's okay, but actually what we found out is to try and put some structure into reaching out to them. Our member groups may decide different, but from our point of view, we want to keep consistency and time. So for example, mornings seem to be better times for a lot of young people, where parents are fine to focus on young people and their education or support in the morning, and in the afternoon they let them off the leash. That's what I do at home. So it's about being consistent there. And what's definitely off limits. So treat communicating on social media like it's real life. And obviously there's a legal aspect to that, and there's a disciplinary aspect to that. Confidential information. You're letting someone in your home. This is my home, and I may or may not want my children's images shared or recorded. So it's also about not giving state secrets away about the work. So I can tell you what Youth Scotland are planning to do, and it may not happen because things are changing so quickly. So it's about holding some things back to protect yourselves as well. Obviously, financial information. If you look at when you're on Zoom, there's a feature at the middle of the screen. If I can just come out of this for 1 second. There's a feature at the bottom. I'm just going back into the full screen here. There we go, stop share. So I don't know if you can see at the bottom of the screen, it says there's a share screen feature. So what that does, it means that anything that's on my desktop, if you see what I mean, is available for you to see. So for example, if I had my emails up or anything like that, it would be quite difficult. I don't know if you saw that actually. Okay, I'm just going to go back into the slideshow. Seamless, that's what this is, absolutely seamless. Can you see that, by the way? No? Okay, I'll try again. Are we back up and running? Thank you, guys. Okay, embargoed stories. Obviously, you know, if there's major changes, organisational, it's very easy when you're talking online to sort of try and give people a heads up on what's about to happen. We do it all the time, but there are some big changes happening in our organisation and other organisations, including staffing. So it's basically not a good idea to discuss any of that. Obviously, anything that has an organisational damage or disrepute angle. Other personal information. If you live in your community and you live near young people, you are not only meeting them at the youth club, you're now meeting them inside your house, in effect. And for some people in some areas that I do know, this has certain difficulties regarding the distance they may choose to maintain with their young people. And obviously, your boss might be very upset with you if you fail to do any of the above. Now, in terms of what we've got there. We do have some guidance which I'll share with you there. I'm going to send everything over to Liz after this, where we've got a bigger document which I'll hopefully show you through in a little bit. And lastly, I've just sort of thought, obviously, think about the assumptions that we make as youth workers versus the reality, and obviously talk to parents and carers. They are key. Nothing will work in this new way of working without buying from them, because actually it's the support they need to offer, it's space, it's time. They are, if you like, interpreting everything they're getting from youth workers, from organisations. So if we don't communicate in the right language to parents and carers, what we may see as a perfectly good programme with good outcomes will be interpreted in the way it is. So we really need to support parent carers with that information. We need to do better at partnership work, particular education, where they've got the young people are already engaged via Microsoft 365. They've got teams. We need to keep engaging with them. We need to think about what the cost of doing this is. Can we afford not to invest? Funding implications. We need to keep an eye on the medium and longer term as well. We need to actually stand up with funders. I'm not going to do a 6-hour full-day training with a group of young people online in the same way that I would in face. It's not fair. So funders will adapt, and many of them already have. Some of our funders supported the Youth Action Fund, which was like an emergency fund we put out, and that was existing funders, knowing that we couldn't deliver some of the things we were going to, said we're happy to put money towards something else if it broadly into community youth work. So your funders may accept you doing 4 hours delivery instead of 8. They may accept you providing video evidence of a Zoom as opposed to coming out and doing an evaluation. This all kicked off before the end of the financial year, which was chaotic, but in a way, we were forced to consider the relationship with funders. So that's something else there. And also consider the lack of safe space for participants, in particular for vulnerable young people whose main safe space may be coming into youth projects. And that might be the only reason they're coming, is because they feel safe. You are now asking them to engage with you in a way that makes them feel maybe a bit less safe where they are, in a place that maybe they don't see as a safe space. I've got a couple of web pages I'll just highlight you before I go. I'm probably over time. So obviously, I'll just have to come out of this and stop share and start share. Okay, can you see the web page I'm scrolling down? So on the Youth Scotland web page, you can see where I've taken some information from. It's designed for community youth work. It goes through funding, our awards, all the rest of it. It's got some useful links. The SCVO website and the YouthLink's own website are very good also. We've also got a download where it's the quick tips, where some of the safeguarding information was taken from, but on each heading it expands to a paragraph of information on each one. I'd recommend that, but of course, you know, Liz has made me aware of some of the support that YouthLink have. SCVO are doing great jobs too, and in terms of young people, Young Scott are actually pretty good at directing young people for explanations too. So I think for me, that's me not rattling on anymore. So thanks for being patient and stuff. I don't know, Liz, if you wanted to encourage questions or discussions.
Thank you so much, Kobi, for your input. That was brilliant. Thank you.